There are just some Wuthering Waves units that have been useful to nearly everyone, and for good reason too. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. We'll kick things off with Shorekeeper and Verina. I'm grouping them up because both of them basically do the same thing, but Shorekeeper does it better, so we'll start talking about her first. I think it's very, very obvious as to why literally everybody that has Shorekeeper uses her basically all the time. She provides so much valuable support to basically every team in the game. I don't think Kuro has put out a single main DPS that can't work with Shorekeeper in some way, shape, or form. Granted, there are some that use her better than others, but for the most part, she's best in slot for nearly everyone. There are some examples, such as an S0R1 Carlotta preferring to play with Arrow Rover and Shakona over Shorekeeper, or a free-to-play DPS Phoebe preferring to play with Sanhua and Mortefi over Shorekeeper, because naturally one slot is going to be taken up by Spectral Rover in order to apply Spectral Frazzle. However, notice that I said free-to-play DPS Phoebe. If you do have Shakona, then her best team still contains Shorekeeper. And free-to-play Carlotta without Shakona also greatly enjoys using Shorekeeper. This truly is one of the most omnipotent characters in the entire game. Even for the units that don't utilize her as well, they can still utilize her fantastically. She really does provide everything that you could ever want out of a good third slot teammate. Because here's the thing, crit buffs are just very universally applicable. We don't have a single main DPS in the game right now that doesn't want to use crit stats. Of course this may change in the future, but as it currently stands, that's the case. Even after negative statuses were added to the game, a DOT type mechanic, all of the negative status DPSs, they still want to build crit. So for as long as crit DPSs are relevant, which is basically going to be throughout this game's entire lifespan, Shorekeeper will be relevant. Of course, they could power creep her in the future and add a better third slot teammate that's able to do more crit buffing, but that's probably not going to happen for a very long time, because she's so good at what she does. And even if they did add somebody like that, that would then complete the trio of generalist healers, Shorekeeper, Verina, and then whoever that new character would be. Granted, in recent times, Kuro Games has been adding more alternatives to Shorekeeper or upgrades in specific teams, such as Lupa for Triple Fusion for example, so I don't even think that they're going to make a second Shorekeeper. Genuinely, the only way that I can see Shorekeeper falling out of fashion is if we end up having a meta that centers around mostly non-crit based DPSs. If we ever go to a region where it's mostly, oh, you don't really want to build crit on these characters, and crit buffs don't really do much for them, then sure, Shorekeeper's probably not going to be good for that specific subset of units. But crit is the standard, so she's basically always going to be useful going forward. And you could argue that she could also fall out of relevance if they continue to make replacements for her in specific teams, but to that I'd say, she's a very strong generalist. I usually don't like to overvalue generalists because I feel like they have to have a lot to offer to each team that they're in order to be considered truly valuable. And in my opinion, Shorekeeper delivers. She absolutely brings enough to the table in order to be justified in each team that you use her in. And up until this point, I've mostly been glazing the crit buffs, but she's also got damage amp on outro, which is really, really cool. And she's easily able to provide attack buffs through sets like 5-piece Rejuvenating Glow, along with equipment such as Fallacy of No Return. Or you can even use Bellborn Geocologne if you're using her with an HP scaler such as Carlotta. She's fantastic for casuals as well, really, really easy to understand, and it's just super hard to mess her up. And her S2 is absolutely fantastic for attack scalers, which currently makes up most of this game's main DPSs. That obviously could change in the future, but when you consider how many attack scalers we have, and when you also consider that most Wuthering Waves DPSs stay good for basically forever, there's not really such a thing as a DPS falling off and being unusable in endgame, that's really freaking good, because she's always going to be good for a very large subset of characters. And then I don't really want to spend too long talking about Verina because she kind of is just like a diet Shorekeeper and she doesn't really have the crit buffs, but she still has a lot going for her. Mostly that her rotation is very freaking quick, especially if you can get S2, but even if you don't have that S2, her rotation is one of the shortest in the game. So she takes up basically no field time in comparison to Shorekeeper. And simply being a diet Shorekeeper is more than good enough already. I mean, shoot dude, before that computer lady launched, she was the best support in the game, until she came out. And she's still really, really valuable even now. That should be testament to her strength. So it makes sense why basically everybody uses these characters, and basically everybody wants Shorekeeper if they don't have her already. Then we reach Sanhua. This character is kind of nuts. This is a free 4-star, but it feels like she runs the meta, or she at least runs the substitutes meta. Basically, if you don't have the premium 5-star option for any particular DPS, you basically always use Sanhua. She is almost always your best bet, because holy heck, she takes up like no field time whatsoever. She does that while being really simple to understand. And if you're willing to put the effort in to build her, she's actually able to do a respectable amount of sub DPS. So she's got that going for her too, and she can easily trigger 5-piece Moonlit Clouds along with Impermanent Terran. Much like the last two, she's in a situation where she can slot with most characters in this game very effectively. I wouldn't say literally everyone in the way that Shorekeeper and Verina can, but a very large chunk of the roster, yes. Her sole existence is why Roshia is just not really worth getting. I am telling you, that fast field time is everything. I really want to put some emphasis on that. Her fast Concerto generation is nuts, and it genuinely makes her such a good pick. And it's not just the fact that she's a really good slot-in many teams, she's also just genuinely useful in plenty of them. Her basic percent buffing is very high, so this leads her to being an actually good buffer for plenty of DPSs. For example, Absolution Phoebe benefits quite nicely from Sanhua. Obviously, the Acolyte does have a premium best install team in the game now, and there's not really any reason to use Sanhua if you already have Shakona, but considering that Phoebe is one of the most free-to-play friendly DPSs in all of Wuthering Waves, because both of her potential teammates can be free, it's still a pretty realistic use case. Not to mention, a very strong one. You would be impressed, I feel like free-to-play Phoebe is still a very strong DPS. She's also really solid with Encore, a main DPS character that has been good since 1.0. And of course, we cannot forget about Camellia, because like I said earlier, Roshia's entire career was ended by Sanhua. The Clown Kid was supposed to be the crazy lady's best in slot support. And while that is true, it's definitely not by a significant margin. At least, not enough of a margin to justify spending all those limited pulls on her. But Sanhua, on the other hand, this free character shows up and provides a crud ton of basic percent buffing with absolutely no questions asked, and allows Camellia to destroy literally every endgame mode in the game. Her existence retroactively makes Camellia one of the most free-to-play friendly DPSs in all of Wuthering Waves. I'm telling you, the value is off the charts for the Jinjo Magistrate's bodyguard, and her value has only continued to rise. Throughout Renacita, she has not become more obsolete. No, she has become even better, and I'm going crazy out here because it feels like every new character that comes out is able to use her in some way, shape, or form. This meta is ruled by Sanhua, dude. Needless to say, this is a character that basically everyone uses, because why wouldn't you? This character is usable in like 99% of circumstances. There is a very high chance that you're gonna find her useful somewhere on your account. And the fact that she's free just sweetens the deal. Definitely one of the craziest characters in Wuthering Waves in terms of meta value. Everyone's got a reason to use her. I'd say the only circumstance in which you wouldn't really use Sanhua that much is if you have every premium team option for every single team that you play. Fair enough. But most people are not pulling for every 5-star, and to those people, there is going to be somewhere where they can use Sanhua. And then last, but certainly not least, we have the esteemed Montelli lady Carlotta. This has to be one of the most popular main DPS characters in the whole game. And for very good reason. For starters, her damage baseline is just really high. She's amazing with her signature weapon, but it's absurd how quickly she's able to clear even on just a static mist. And even though you do ideally want Joja for her best hypercarry team, she still feels very flexible in terms of team options, because you're able to slot her with multiple second slot teammates, and still have her feel like she's absolutely wiping the floor with TOA. Yang Yang, Sanhua, Changli, Cantarella, Brant Wuthering Waves, you get the idea. There's plenty of options at her disposal. And she's really freaking easy to use while still having those high skill level teams such as Changli Quickswap for people who'd like to engage with a more high skill gameplay team. But the fact that she's so accessible and she performs so well on budget options makes her an extremely popular pick. I feel like I don't know anybody who doesn't have this character. She also doesn't have any ties to negative statuses, which makes her a very versatile DPS. And despite her being very single target centric, this hasn't really impeded her ability in WuWa at all. She still feels very strong in that mode, because you're still able to hit a lot of trash mobs with good positioning. This character has genuinely been consistently great ever since her release. Every Wuthering Waves DPS up until this point has been very good, and I wouldn't really say that there's any specific DPS that's bad. All of them are solid at the very least. But Carlotta has just managed to maintain this consistent level of quality, so that naturally just lends her into being a very popular choice. She ends up being amazing for new players and experienced players alike, and even though we've gotten plenty of strong DPSs up until this point, she still feels amazing. Personally, I expect her to remain as a popular choice for quite a while longer. I can't see her falling off anytime soon. She's managed to stay consistently good up until this point, and I just don't see why that would change. And a quick honorable mention that I'd like to throw in here is for anybody who was around during 1.2, I assume you probably got a lot of usage out of your Shangli Yao. He's not particularly remarkable nowadays, and while he's still a good DPS, I wouldn't really go out of your way to pull for him if you didn't manage to get him for free back then. I'm just kind of throwing this in there because there is a very high chance that if you got him for free, then by technicality, you most likely did use him. So I'm just quickly giving him his flowers. Thanks for being a solid option back then, Sheng Liao, and still a pretty decent one even now. Across all of the primary units that I discussed in this video, they all have quite a degree of versatility that's very, very useful. They're able to apply themselves in so many different situations, which makes them very, very handy in many circumstances, and they're excellent for basically any endgame because of that too. I am curious to see how this is going to change, or if it's going to change at all within the next couple of months. I honestly doubt it. Maybe Carlotta could change. There could be a brand new DPS within the next few months that's going to be the brand new best pick for basically everyone, but Sanhua, Shorekeeper, and Verina, those three characters are just staples at this point. Staple in the way that bread is a staple food in the average human's diet. However, who knows what the future may hold, and maybe Kuro's going to prove me wrong on that. We'll just have to wait and see. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below, and even tell me who you personally use the most. As of now, I definitely get the most use out of my Brant Wuthering Waves and Changli, but whenever Cho Yuen comes out, he is probably gonna become the most used character on my account. Hopefully this video was able to tell you the most used units in Wuthering Waves. This has been Juice, signing out. And seriously, Kuro, I would really like some more information on Cho Yuen. I want to use him immediately.